everyone, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Elizabeth and I run the blog lifefromtheviola.com, where I share my favorite practice tips, general advice, and tech for musicians. Today I am showing you the inside of some of my practice journals and sharing some helpful tips on how you can organize some of your practice sessions. So in today's video, I am focusing just on paper practice journals, and in part 2, I will talk all about digital practice journaling. So what apps you can use and different ways of organizing that digital aspect of it. Let's go ahead and dive into my practice journals. So this is the first consistent practice journal that I kept from August 2018 to December 2018. I filled up a lot of pages really quickly. So I'm just going to go through a bit of this and show you how I formatted all of my entries and kind of how I planned different things. So at the top I always wrote if it was a practice session or something else. We'll get to something else a little later on. After I finished, I totaled the amount of time I did at the top, and then I wrote the date. So I would do kind of each type of thing that I did, so scales and whatever kind of warm-up I did, etude, rep, orchestra music. So let's find something that has more than just scales. So here I split my warm-up into 2 sections, scales, and then some exercises from a different book, and then an etude. So I did those all as separate sections just because I went more in depth. I wrote about the scales that I did, the different exercises I did, and some notes about the etude. So some days I was really in depth, and other days I was not as in depth. This was a super in-depth practice session. It was really good, 2 hours and 15 minutes. So I wrote lots of notes about each exercise that I did, and I had this awesome thought that practicing and warming up slowly gives me less tension, big smiley face, because that was really exciting, and I knew I needed to write it down because that's something I always need a reminder about. So then when I got onto my rep, I wrote down a question: how can I find sixth before rehearsal 49? Listen to different recordings, and just some other notes about how I did that day. I wrote where I had tension, what I did well. I guess I got the hard rhythm right on the first try. Just some other notes. And then over here was something completely different. I wrote some lesson notes. So I worked on the third movement of a concerto that day, and I wrote some pretty in-depth notes about different rehearsal numbers and kind of some ideas about how to play it as a whole. So at this point in time, I was the principal for the viola section in the orchestra, so I was in charge of running sectionals. So on the days of the sectionals, I would plan out what we would do. I'd write the piece that we had to do, rehearsal numbers that I wanted to cover, and why, just so that I could actually remember and keep everything straight when I was trying to lead like 8 different people. So each piece here, the rehearsal numbers I wanted to go over if I wanted to listen to things, and the reasons why I wanted to do them, just so that I could stay on track. So at this point, I was working on preparing for my senior recital and grad school auditions, so I was trying to be really in depth. So I warmed up for a good amount of time, wrote down everything I did, but not really any notes about it. Then I played some Bach, wrote some notes about flat hair and keeping my thumb loose, just because those are reminders that I need every time I play that. Different movement of Bach, just notes for me to keep working on. Again, these are just kind of thoughts that I had for the future, that I need to not grip my bow so tightly and that I just need to run that movement a lot. Let's move on to my second practice journal. This one went from December 2018 to July 2019, so it finished out my senior year of college. I find that a practice journal is a great place to write questions that you have for lessons. Otherwise, I'll think about it, forget it, and then not remember until I play the piece again, which might be at my lesson, might be after my lesson. So just writing things down is a good way to keep them in the front of your mind. So I put a lot of personality into this practice journal entry from January 2019. I was preparing for my grad school auditions, and I was having a hard time staying motivated over winter break, just staying performance ready. So I practiced some Bach, and I said I hate this so much because I was trying to memorize everything and I was scared and it wasn't going very well. Beethoven 5 was good though. I wrote a smiley face. Hinastera was way more in tune. I had just some constructive things for Tchaikovsky 6 and some notes for Hindemith as well. So a few days later, I created kind of a step-by-step way to try to get myself to memorize this Bach movement for my grad school auditions. So I wrote down the steps that I was going to take, and then I wrote down how long it took me. This part took 20 minutes, second part took 20 minutes, then 40 minutes, and I wrote down how successful it was each time. So that was really helpful for me in that day because I needed something to just help keep me on track because I was having such a hard time practicing at this point. And then some days I just didn't write all that much. I must have been in a rush this day, so I just wrote down what I played and for how long. And I just liked that because it was nice for me to just keep the entries and see just the visual progress that I was making in these two journals. And some days, if I didn't have this with me and I was on campus, I have sticky notes in my Viola case for a bunch of different reasons, and I would just make a little journal entry on a sticky note, just writing down what I did and for how long. At one point, I did keep track of how long I played for an entire semester. I think it might have been spring 2018. I think I played for like 1,000 hours or something, including all of my rehearsals and everything. I have no idea if that's a lot of time or not a lot or somewhere in between, but I thought it was really cool, so I always like to keep track. I put a sticker on that one because I felt really good about myself that day. Anyway, I just like keeping track of the time because otherwise I don't really have an idea of how long I practice. Time either goes really fast or really slow, and keeping myself accountable like this just helps me out. Of course, it's about quality and not quantity, so I do try to make this time as effective as possible, and if something was like 5 minutes, I don't worry about it too much, as long as that's not happening like all the time. So on this day, I was working on the Penderecki viola cadenza. I played through the entire thing. This was one of the first times I ever played through it, and I wrote about how I felt afterwards and some things that I'd like to play around with and change. So this is such a great place to come up with ideas about what you about how you want to play your music and how you want to practice. On this day, I wrote out the movements that I had to work on, and I scratched them off as I did them. A lot of people will really plan out their practice sessions, and I've always really wanted to do that, but I've never been able to get into that. So maybe I'll try that at some point and make a video on it, but this is just how I've always done it. I just kind of write as I practice. And this was my final paper practice journal. This went from August 2019 when I started grad school until around March of this year. Around this time, I started using my iPad more, and I started logging my practice sessions digitally. So that's why there are a few blank pages at the end of this one. But I just love this cover. It's so beautiful. So cute. So by this point, I wasn't writing quite as much in my practice journal. It was more just to hold myself accountable and see, I practiced but didn't write anything down. So this was the start of grad school, and I wasn't super happy with anything, so I just didn't write very much. Let's go forward a little bit. So now we're in 2020. And I started writing a few more notes at this point. Some things I wanted to do in the future, and for Bartok, learn how to enjoy playing it. Yeah. And on this page, I was listening to a few different pieces, trying to pick out my recital rep. And here you can see Maria Newman Dance for Deliverance was something that I really wanted to learn, and I ended up playing it. So if you want to hear my performance of that, you can go to the eye above and you can listen to that. It's such beautiful music. So really, by this point in time, I wasn't writing as many notes, and I was really just writing how long I was practicing everything. I just didn't feel super inspired to write anything down. I really kept it all in my head. And on this page, I planned out exactly what my recital rep was going to be. I listened to everything and followed along with the music, and I tried to figure out the techniques that I would need for everything in all of this rep so that I could really focus on what was the same and what was different in all of these pieces and what I would probably need to get really good at. So I don't know if I can really describe the way that I figured these things out, but, just from years of playing the viola and just looking at music, I could see, like, when it would be spiccato, rubato, switching between arco and pizzicato really fast, if there were a lot of harmonics or trills or double stops, if it's really long and I would have to keep up my stamina while playing and, being in a performance mindset, just looking for all of those difficult things that I would have to work on. Just writing it down really helped me kind of make a plan. Even though I didn't write a plan down, just writing it down made me really aware, and it was very helpful. So I highly recommend doing that if you're planning for a recital. Just listening to everything with the score and writing down what you think you're going to have to work on. And it's okay if some of these things end up being too easy or you change your mind, but having this list like this was really helpful for me to kind of keep myself on track while practicing. So that was an overview of 3 physical practice journals that I've kept. I think it's a really nice place to be creative in your practice sessions. It's just nice to write everything down, and you can see I used the same purple pen in each journal, and one of the reasons why I stopped using this one was because my purple pen ran out of ink and I was really sad about it. But it's just a nice way to bring something fun into your practice sessions, and I love notebooks and journals. They're so beautiful. So just having a reason to use one was super nice. If you have any questions or if you have any helpful comments, please leave them down below. I would love to hear your thoughts on practice journaling. I hope you found these tips helpful and have found at least one thing that you can implement into your own practice sessions. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel. I post new musical videos every Sunday at noon Eastern Time. I also have a Ko-fi profile where you can support my content if you feel so generous. Thanks for watching!